It's 9 p.m. East African. The place is Broadcasting House along Harry Thuku Road. Good evening. This is KBC Prime Edition. I am Mboya, top in this live broadcast. Executive order. The offices of the Deputy President and Chief Cabinet Secretary elevated. The Hunt for Truth. Family of slain model Edwin Chiloba says their son was a Christian and rules out mystery about his sexuality. Plus, Kisi's bizarre killings. Father hacks son to death. Thank you for joining us. Susan Fulko is our sign language interpreter. Our socials are at KBC Channel 1 and my Twitter handle is at Mboya24. Let's begin with the executive order. President William Ruto has reorganized his administration, bestowing more powers and functions to his deputy Rigathi Gachagua. In the executive order number 1 of 2023, the deputy president will chair number 1, cabinet committees. Number 2, he will oversee the implementation of cabinet decisions across all ministries. Gishuki Washira was on that story of the president bestowing upon his deputy that responsibility of reviving and reforming the coffee sector as well. Here is that report that opens our coverage tonight.
In an executive order, President William Ruto has moved to empower the office of Deputy President. Rigathi Gachagua will chair cabinet committees and oversee the implementation of cabinet decisions across all ministries. Rigathi has also been charged with the responsibility of reviving the coffee sector following the placement of the Coffee Subsector Reforms Implementation Committee in the office of the Deputy President. Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi will chair the Principal Secretaries Committees and supervise the technical monitoring and evaluation of government policies, programs and projects. The executive order comes just hours after the President hosted a high-level meeting of the Kenya Kwanza administration in Nanyuki. Gishoki Washira, Prime Edition.
Well, from that report by Gishoki Washira, let's now get an update on that Chiloba death probe. 5 suspects linked to the murder of activist Edwin Chiloba, aka Chiloba, will remain in police custody for 21 days as investigations into the gruesome murder continues. The 5, including prime suspect Jackton Odhiambo, appeared before an Eldoret court where Senior Principal Magistrate Richard Odenyo granted the DCI more time to detain the 5 in order to facilitate the completion of the probe. Now, the directive comes even as Chiloba's family denied claims that their kin belonged to the queer community. Here's that report.
The family of Edwin Kipto alias Chiloba has maintained that their son was a Christian as opposed to reports making round in the media.
Sisi kama familia tumejua mtoto wetu alikuja university ako 4th year. Mambo mengine ambayo tunaona kwa social media hatujui. He was brought up as a Christian. High school Kimuron, St. Francis Kimuron, alikuwa anaitwa pastor. Alikuwa student leader akiongoza mambo ya YCS.
The family is demanding justice days after the model was found stuffed in a metallic box in Uasin Gishu County.
Na ninaomba wa Kenya, just be fair. Be fair for us. Kwa sababu kuna mtu anaweza taka mtoto wake akue hivyo. Just to be fair, atujui ya mambo na mtoto wetu amewawa. Tunataka tu justice, nothing more, just justice. Na muache arrest in peace.
On Monday, a court in Eldoret remanded 5 people who were arrested in connection to the incident. The 5 suspects include Jackton Odhiambo, who has been widely mentioned as a person of interest in efforts to unravel the gruesome murder.
Mentioned on 31st of January.
Senior Principal Magistrate Richard Odenyo granted an application by Eldoret South DCI boss Stephen Mumba not to grant the suspects bail but have them detained for 21 days to allow for post-mortem and completion of investigation.
I'm asking this Honorable Court to grant me 21 days to enable me to complete the investigations because of the following grounds: that a post-mortem is yet to be conducted on the deceased, that the respondents in their statements stated to have assisted in moving a metallic box that had been stabbed to the deceased body.
Forensic examination will also be subjected to the vehicle which was used to ferry and dump Chiloba's body, as well as the house where he lived in. DCI also sought to retrieve CCTV footage of the place where Chiloba and Odhiambo were prior to the incident. Police say they are yet to retrieve Chiloba's mobile phone. The main suspect, Odhiambo, told the court that he was not familiar with the faces of his fellow suspects in court, asking to be released on bond to help his family. The case will be mentioned on January 31st, 2023. Kamchemenza for Prime Edition.
On to another disturbing report. On Crime Watch, an elderly man has allegedly hacked his son to death following a domestic disagreement in Ritanda village, Kisii sub-county. The suspect, Sebastian Maturwa Onsare, aged 60, was reportedly irked by his son's demand to share with him part of the proceeds of a family piece of land that he had sold. And the man who killed his two children in Kisii last week was arraigned in court today.
This is the situation in Ritanda village, Bomariba location, Kisii South sub-county. A family has been thrown into mourning after an elderly man allegedly stabbed his son to death.
Hata sisi tu atatui kitu kilifanyika sasa kupata kumtunga kisa na kumpiga kwa kitu.
Sasa ikifika jana jioni siku saa 6 hivi ama saa 5 hivi ikapigwa simu ikipita ameowawa. Tukawauliza kwani amekufa namna gani?
A disagreement is said to have ensued when the son demanded a share of the money gotten from the sale of family land. Lucy Mora, mother to the deceased, said the family had been living under threats from her husband, who did not want to be held accountable on family assets, including their disposal.
Tukachenga hii nyumba. Hapo karibu vile walikuwa walipomoa nyumba hii. Hapo karibu mama mkwe akawa kijiji kikasema lazima ule mwanamke akuje. Akakuja naendelea kukaa. Ninakaa lakini ninakaa na magumu ya vita. Naamka asubuhi na visu.
Meanwhile, the man who allegedly killed his two children, aged 10 months and 2 years, has been arraigned in a court at Ogembo in Kisii County and remanded for 14 days, pending, among others, determination of his mental health status. Nelson Momanyi Ontita was Monday morning arraigned before Ogembo Principal Magistrate Kalestas Sindani, but did not take a plea. The magistrate granted the prosecution's application to detain the accused for 14 days for completion of investigation. This comes as the Law Society of Kenya, Nyanza Southwest Branch, condemned ongoing bizarre incidents, including killings in Kisii and Nyamira counties.
Chumba now moves us away from those disturbing items. A section of Kiambu County Assembly members stormed Kiambu Governor's office to protest alleged delays in the issuance of bursaries and other development activities in the county. The MCAs who staged a sit-in right outside the Kiambu County headquarters after they failed to meet Governor Kimani Wamatangi accused him of undermining and usurping their role as MCAs and, decried the poor state of feeder roads in the wards despite the Assembly passing a budget of 100 million shillings for that purpose.
Kiambu County Assembly stormed Governor Kimani Wamatangi's office to demand answers as to why bursary committees were being formed at ward level without their knowledge or involvement.
Bunge ile ilipitisha anapeana inafaa tupate milioni 100. Na juzi akasema ameongeza ikakuwa milioni 200. Hii milioni 200 tunasikia anasema ati MCAs atapata 50,000.
We came here so that we may consult with the governor to see how we can accelerate the process of coming up with the proper regulations to ensure that bursaries are disbursed on time.
Governor Wamatangi was not in his office during the protest to address their concerns. The ward reps, however, will not relent and staged a sit-in outside the county headquarters, accusing Wamatangi of usurping their role.
Inasemekana ya kwamba anataka kufanya kazi na Kimani Wamatangi Foundation. Ili hali sisi ndio tumechaguliwa kule mashinani na watu wetu wanatugoja ndio tuweze kuwapatia zile basari. Na leo hii tumesema ya kwamba tumekuja tukae chini na yeye ndiye atuambie kama atafanya kazi na sisi ama atafanya kazi na Kimani Wamatangi Foundation.
So we felt as representatives of the people, we want to talk with the governor, consult with him and see where we can come in and chip in to ensure that development takes place.
The MCAs decried the poor state of feeder roads in the wards, which they claimed have remained unrepaired despite the Assembly passing a budget of 100 million shillings for the purpose.
I have a governor, yeye anataka kuwa chief officer, anataka kuwa waziri, anataka kuwa chief officer, anataka kuwa departmental head, anataka kuwa sub-county admin, anataka kuwa ward admin, anataka kuwa MCA. Surely
governor ameweka hii ofisi yake na mimi siogopi kusema ati mpaka bulb kama imeharibika kwa ward yako unaenda unambembeleza, unaandika barua, anapiga na wewe picha ndio bulb itengenezwe. Bulb.
While questioning Wamatangi's style of leadership, the MCAs asked the governor to delink his office from the Wamatangi Foundation, which they claimed is being used to carry out county functions.
The whole words, there is a logistic officer wa Wamatangi Foundation. Kama kwangu Tinganga, yeye anaenda mashinani na anasema Mwaura hana responsibility ya representation at the ward. Surely.
Wamatangi could not be reached for comment on phone, but a source close to his office said the MCAs were being incorporated in the bursary committees as a sign of goodwill, as the law does not require their involvement in the process. Ben Chumba, Prime Edition.
Let's look at what's happening on scales of justice. And Chief Justice Martha Koome is tonight calling on the Commission on Revenue Allocation to be mindful of marginalization and its effects on national unity as well as stability. Koome says that CRA ought to carry out a regular review of the marginalization policy. Why? So that it ensures fair distribution of the Equalization Fund.
On Monday morning at the Supreme Court of Kenya, Chief Justice Martha Koome presided over the swearing-in of 8 commissioners to the Commission on Revenue Allocation.
I, Dr. George Jalango Midiwo, having been appointed a member of the Commission on Revenue Allocation.
The Chief Justice urged the Commission to consider all areas of the country and ensure an equitable, fair and just share of funds.
I would urge you to always bear in mind the history of our nation, which is marginalization of some areas in this country that have often contributed to dissatisfaction by some of our compatriots with our national building efforts and thus posing a challenge to national unity and state stability.
The task of sharing revenues is a very political process. It's very technical on one hand, it's also very political on the other. you're going to have to strike a very good balance between the two.
The commissioners include Benedict Mutiso, Koitameto Lekina, Fatuma Gedi, Dr. Jalango Midiwo, Hadija Juma, Dr. Isabel Boyaki, Jonas Kuko, and Dr. Chris Kiptol, Principal Secretary, Treasurer. Meanwhile, the Employment and Labor Relations Court has ordered the Board of Directors, National Transport Safety Authority, to recruit a qualified person to fill the occurring vacancy in the Office of the Director General, in strict compliance with Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya, pending an inter-party hearing or further orders of the court. In a ruling by Justice Byron Mongaya, the court further ordered material on record be served for inter-party hearing or further orders on the 19th of January 2023. Serafina Robi for Prime Edition.
Well, we know that there's a task force that for prison reforms that has been sworn in, plus has white smoke billowed on the volatile Baringo area. We will let you know after this first short break right here on KBC Prime. Stay with us.
Cheza loto, shinda pesa moto.
Wachua mamili leo na loto moto. Cheza ukianzia na shilingi 50 na ushinde milioni 2 kila siku. Kucheza ni rahisi zaidi. Kwenye M-Pesa, chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number, weka 757070. Account number, andika neno loto. Kisha, weka star. Alafu nambari yako ya simu. Kwenye amount, weka kiwango chochote cha pesa. Kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi shilingi 2000. Lipa na usubiri draw. Makinika papa hapa ili utimize ndoto zako na Loto Moto. Cheza kwa kuwajibika. Mchezo huu ni wazi kwa watu walio na umri wa miaka 18 na zaidi. Ujumbe huu umeidhinishwa na BCLB. Cheza Loto Moto. Shinda pesa moto moto.
Walipata safe house ya Sam. Niluka imechomeka. Is he dead?
Ibetu mwana hiyo? Kuna kitu hapo. Mwana hiyo baki jamaa yake ni bahati bana.
Imani hajakuwa kenda shule for 3 days sasa.
Nilipata ile lori ya juzi. Tutatumia fake and break. 2 teams, stealth incursion, in and out in under 20 minutes.
Ukiharibu hii. Nyumbani.
After months of rigorous training, recruits are ready to serve the nation in their various fields. Tune in to KBC Channel 1 this Tuesday, the 10th of January, for the passing out parade ceremony of the National Police Service, live from Kiganjo Campus, Nyeri. The ceremony will be presided over by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Kenya, His Excellency President William Ruto.
Welcome back to KBC Channel 1, our socials at KBC Channel 1 and my Twitter handle at Mboya24. That story on the police task force, Chief Justice Martha Koome has urged the task force that is mandated to oversee police reforms to work towards the realization of the constitutional dream of a democratic policing. Chief Justice Emeritus David Maraga, who was sworn in as the chair of the task force, said that they were ready to review reports and implement what is left after engaging the National Police Service, the Kenya Prisons Service, and the general public. Here's that report.
Supreme Court building Monday morning.
Chief Justice retired David Kenani Maraga,
having been appointed as chairperson of the National Task Force on Improvement of the Terms and Conditions of Service and other reforms.
Chief Justice Martha Koome presided over the swearing-in of a task force appointed by President William Ruto to oversee reforms at the National Police Service and the Kenya Prison Service, chaired by retired Chief Justice David Maraga. During the ceremony, Koome reminding the new office bearers to follow the law in executing their mandates.
This appointment, as the chairperson has said, comes at an opportune time, given that the work of the task force will serve to catalyze effective service delivery by these two institutions that are most critical and crucial for the enforcement and security within our country.
As a team, we look forward to engaging the leadership of both the National Police Service and the Kenya Prison Service. More importantly, we also look forward to hearing from the Kenyan public.
Maraga, who will lead the group of 23 members, said they were up to task and will incorporate the input of the public to inform their final recommendations to President William Ruto in March.
This morning, we have had preliminary discussions with the Cabinet Secretary and the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Interior ahead of this swearing in. And during that meeting, we had some reflections on the task ahead of us and the expectations of the two institutions.
Other than Maraga, others sworn in include Karo Kariuki, who will deputize Maraga, former Principal Administrative Secretary Moffat Kangi, John Ole Moyaki, Ibrahim Jilo Guyo, Richard Kirundi, Elizabeth Mweni, and Roslyn Odede. The task force has also Joash Odhiambo Dache, Doreen Mudaura, Albert Mwenda, Terry Chebet Maina, Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, Captain Retired Simi Werunga, Mutuma Ruchaere, Ann Ireri, Steve Kayongo, Jafar Mohammed, Sami Chepkwoni, and Khadija Mire as members. Omwanza Ombati, Joy Mdivo Masinde, and Rosalind Kamau will serve as joint secretaries of the task force. They were appointed on 21st December 2022 via a Gazette notice. For Prime Edition, I'm Ben Troinjue.
Now, has the Baringo peace efforts bore fruit? Well, the Ichamis and the Pokot communities have decided to bury the hatchet and live in peace and harmony. Banditry, many people believe, and deeply rooted mistrust have for years driven a wedge between those two communities. That now is a thing of the past, and there seems to be a new dawn. Ruth Wamboy with more details.
It is a new dawn for the Ilchamus and the Pokot. After years of mistrust and bad blood, the hatchet has been buried. They have decided to forge a new path and use the next generation to build a long-lasting relationship. For communities that have often clashed over resources, such a meeting is precious.
Sababu moja ambao tunataka hii njia itumike ni kwamba zamani hawa jamii ni adui, sasa ni marafiki. Mtu akitoka Chepkalacha aende Kiserian, ataenda kwa familia ya rafiki yao.
Numerous peace initiatives have been introduced in the past, but not a single one has been able to silence the gun.
Kwa tukisafiri hii barabara hii, watu wanateremka wanaenda Kiserian, wanaenda kununua chakula, wanatoka huko wanakuja. Sisi pia wale wanakuja pia wanakuja kama soko ya Mkutani. Tuesday wanakuja kama Chepkalacha hapa, wanakuja kununua chakula 1 2 3 huko Chepkalacha. Halafu wanasafiri barabara, it's very good. Kukawa kwamba now the most best part ni hii ya watoto. Watoto sasa wamekuwa intact kabisa kutoka Pokot, mtoto wa Pokot na yule wa Iljams wamekuwa moja kabisa.
Kutoka 205 hakuna mtu anakuja pita barabara hii. Ukitaka kuja pita barabara hii tunatumia gari ya jeshu ama ni askari ama ni watu tu ya serikali hakuna mtu ambaye anaweza kutembea kwa mguu. Kwa hivi sasa vile sasa sisi tunatembea na mguu, ni hiyo tunataka kurudisha hiyo amani, alapo watu watembee na mguu, watoto na wasasi, ni hiyo ndio tunataka kurudisha.
United in remorse and ready to use children as ambassadors of peace, these communities say the future looks bright.
Tunaimba ili tunafanya kujumuika pamoja. Watu wana associate kuwa pamoja kwa manyimbo ile ya Wapokot ama ya Aljamus. Na pengine ile community ya Wapokot wasikia watoto yao wako upande wa Aljamus. Hawataweza kufanya maneno sababu wanajua watoto yao wako na marafiki huko.
The framers of the peace initiative say the new approach is a getaway to elusive peace. Ruth Wamboy reporting for Prime Edition.
Using children as ambassadors is a masterstroke. Well, that's a good one. While Ichamas and Pokot celebrate their newfound peace, hundreds of Nakuru County government casual workers who were laid off early last week have accused Governor Susan Kihika of subjecting them to psychological as well as financial trauma. The over 605 environment workers have called upon the national government to intervene and have them reinstated, noting that their laying off is both inhumane and suspicious. Beatrice Gatonye is on that report.
The casual workers claim that they were laid off without notice and without pay, yet they had worked for many years at the devolved unit. Wangari, who was working in the environment department, said the untimely and unprecedented sacking through phone calls has exposed them to severe financial hardship, poverty, debt, alienation, stigma, increased social isolation and ill health.
Tumejaribu kufuatilia, tukakuja huku kwako Madam Governor, tukapata huyuko, tukatumwa, tukaenda kwa CEO na CC wa environment, na instead ya kutusikiza walituambia sisi tulikuwa kama token, na token iliisha. Sisi si token, tulifanya kazi for more than 10 years.
Kenya County Government Workers Union Deputy Secretary General John Dunda condemned the sacking, adding that the move is aimed at giving the new administration an opportunity to employ its own people as a reward for campaigning for it.
Hawakupatiwa hata notisi, na sheria inasema wazi ya kwamba mtu anaweza fanya kazi ya kibarua kwa muda wa siku 90, alafu ikipita akuwe confirmed. Wamefanya 10 years.
Dunda says most of the casuals have worked in successive governments, noting that some were employed by the first governor Kennedy Mboya, while others by former governor Lee Kenyanjui.
Tunamuomba gavana wetu ambao tunajua anapenda wafanyikazi ili alejorea ili jambo ambalo limefanywa nyuma yake ili apate kurudisha wafanyikazi kazini, na pia apate kuwa confirm into permanent na pensionable terms.
Hawa watu wote hapa ni hustlers. What is the meaning of bottom up? What is the real meaning of bottom up? The real meaning of bottom up ni hawa watu wa chini. Tuanze na hapa chini. Nadhani kuna mtu katika ofisi ya gavana anajaribu kufanya vituko, lakini ni sawa. Sisi tukenye tunaomba Madam Governor uturudishe kazi permanent and pensionable. Tumeteseka ya kutosha.
The over 605 environment workers are now calling on the national government to intervene and have them reinstated. Beatrice Gatonyangetich, Prime Edition.
A group of youth from Kilifi County under the banner Grow With Us in Kenya, in conjunction with officers from Kilifi GK prison, have started an initiative that aims to plant over 10,000 mangroves in the region. The initiative aims to increase tree cover and reduce the effects of climate change.
In a bid to mitigate the effects of climate change, these youth have heeded to the president's call to expand the country's forest cover to 30% by 2032. Led by Kelly Banda, the youth say mangrove forests play a key role in the ecosystem, and they aim to plant 60 million mangroves in the next 5 years.
And you know, mangrove for the coastal region, it's the in thing because it's the only forest that we have. These other forests are now dying, but with mangrove and the ecosystem, you plant a mangrove, 80%, you're sure that it's going to grow.
An expert in agricultural matters in Kilifi County, Bahanguma, is calling on the government government to inject more funds in conservation.
Kila nyumba inayojengwa kwa mfano, basi kuwe kuna ufuatilizaji wa upandaji wa miti katika sehemu ya ujenzi ule unaofanyika. Yani nyumba sambamba na miti.
Frederick Opio, an officer at the Kilifi GK prison, says there is need for sensitization among the locals on the benefits of trees.
Kilifi GK prison, we are very much happy to be together with Mr. Banda and his team so that we take part in this initiative of conserving the mikoko tree in this particular island.
Kwa matumizi ya nyumbani na kupeleka hata watoto wetu shuleni. Pia kwa upande wa bahari huwa unasaidia hata samaki huwa wanazaana ndani ya mikoko.
The move also expected to influence economic empowerment in the county through the sale of mangrove seeds. Ruth Wamboy reporting for Prime Edition.
Now, the Director of Public Health in Kisii County says that the recent outbreak of anthrax has been contained. Dr. Richard Onkware, however, urged the public to remain calm but vigilant to report any suspicious cases. Frederick Parsayo reports on this and other stories in our county news roundup.
4 patients who had been admitted at the Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospital after contracting anthrax have been treated and discharged. Kisii County Director of Public Health, Dr. Richard Onkware, called on the public to report any suspicious signs and symptoms to relevant authorities for action. As a containment measure, the county has put in place a 9-day free and voluntary livestock vaccination.
We shall kick off or flag off a campaign for vaccinations of all these animals, the cows, including the pets like dogs and cats.
Na mifugo wako pale nyumbani, patia maji pale, tafuta chakula patia pale, mpaka serikali itangaze kwamba ile ugonjwa mbaya imetoka katika mifugo hapa area hii.
In Embu County, a target of registering more than 131,000 farmers from the 6 sub-counties is at its home stretch as the farmers' fertilizer sensitization program enters its 2nd week. This comes after a directive from the president to have all farmers undergo training and registration in order to have an access to subsidized fertilizer program.
The purpose of the registration is to have biodata on the farmers that can benefit through the subsidy fertilizer.
Still in Embu County, criminals have been warned of dire legal consequences when caught. Eastern Regional Commissioner Paul Rotich said a multi-agency approach has been put in place to tame insecurity. He also said traders of illicit brews and drugs will be tracked down.
We are going to engage widely and bring in other stakeholders and recommend for advanced methods of addressing the menace of cattle rustling.
Finally, leaders from Bungoma County have vowed to streamline issues of school bursaries and scholarships, faulting previous regimes for lack of transparency in administration of the education kitty. The leaders said that this was necessitated by the suffering that less privileged families were being subjected to due to segregation and neglect.
The beneficiary must, and I emphasize, be a needy case and vulnerable. The key words to note here, ladies and gentlemen, are needy and vulnerable.
Frederick Parsayo, Prime Edition.
Now, as a young lawyer, aged 26, he stood out from the park when he represented army rebels behind the aborted 1982 attempted overthrow of President Daniel Moi's government. And when the wave of opposition was sweeping across Western Kenya, he made a decision to go against the grain, becoming an ardent KANU and President Moi's supporter. Tonight, in the cabinet, Jackie Wambiru focuses on Moses Wetangula, who served in parliament in President Mwai Kibaki's cabinet.
Born
in 1956, Moses Masika Wetangula is a lawyer who first came to the limelight at the age of 26 years when he represented Senior Private Hezekiah Ochuka, who was accused of leading the 1982 attempted coup against President Daniel Moi's government. He served as a magistrate from 1987 to 1989. Wetangula would years later, during the clamor for multipartyism, win the heart of President Moi, becoming his close ally and defender in Western Kenya, a region dominated by the opposition led by Wamalo wa Kijana. In 1992, Wetangula entered active politics when President Moi nominated him to parliament soon after the first multi-party general election in 1992. In 2002, he joined Ford Kenya and easily beat Munyasia at the party nomination, eventually replacing him as the Sirisia Member of Parliament. Ford Kenya was then under the National Alliance Coalition NAC. In 2007, he joined the Party of National Unity PNU and recaptured the Sirisia parliamentary seat and won. Wetangula would become a key figure in the government of President Mwai Kibaki, both under the National Rainbow Coalition NAC and later under the Party of National Unity PNU. He served in various cabinet positions, including a Minister for Foreign Affairs from 2008 to 2010, and then as Minister for Trade from 2012 to 2013. During the post-2007 election violence, President Kibaki turned to Wetangula and dispatched him to Addis Ababa to address the African Union. He was involved in the peace negotiations brokered by former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan.
Africa has had more than its fair share of unhelpful conflicts, and it is time we sat back and gave peace a chance so that we can focus on development.
In 2010, Wetangula was accused of making the government incur 1.6 billion shillings through purchasing a low-value land in Tokyo, Japan for the Kenyan embassy instead of accepting a free property from the Japanese government. He stepped aside pending investigations.
I have made a personal decision to step aside from my responsibility and appointment as Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Kenya to give room and pleasure to those who have been haunting and tormenting me for the last 3-4 weeks, to give room to the very able arms of investigation to carry out investigations, and I can assure you without any fear of contradiction that my innocence is guaranteed because I am absolutely clear.
In 2011, Wetangula was absolved of wrongdoing in Tokyo scandal and reinstated as minister. In 2013, Wetangula successfully vied for the Bungoma senatorial seat following the nullification of Muskari Kombo's win. The same year, the Coalition for Reform's Democracy Code appointed Wetangula the Senate Minority Leader. Wetangula successfully defended his senatorial seat in the 2017 elections under the National Super Alliance NASA, retaining his minority leader position in the Senate. However, in March 2018, Wetangula was ousted from the Senate minority leadership and replaced by Siaya Senator James Orengo of the Orange Democratic Alliance, ODM. Ahead of the 2022 general election, Wetangula and his Ford Kenya party joined the One Kenya Alliance, OKA, to support Deputy President William Ruto's bid for presidency. Reporting for the Cabinet, I'm Jackie Wambiru.
Wachua mamili leo na Loto Moto. Kucheza ni rahisi zaidi. Kwenye M-Pesa, chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number, weka 757070. Account number, andika neno Loto, kisha weka star alafu nambari yako ya simu. Kwenye amount, weka kiwango chochote cha pesa, kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi shilingi 2,000. Lipa na usubiri draw. Cheza kwa kuwajibika. Mchezo huu ni wazi kwa watu walio na umri wa miaka 18 na zaidi.
As is our usual, we bring you entertainment shows and nothing or less of that.
Event dubbed the Super Mario Experience stood out with 5 experiential color zones to represent the personalities of Matata members.
I'm getting cheese kama panya ya pili. Almost died so alive kama traki ya dili. Pigia kinaro lizeni mwaputon vipi.
King Kaka has officially released his much anticipated album dubbed A Second Life. The album commemorates the period when the superstar was hospitalized for months. 12 out of the 17-track album are collaborations with top music personalities within and beyond Kenya. There is a lot of diversity in the collaborations.
Well, I'll be coming back a little later on in this live broadcast to look at the day's sports. But first things first, Wairimo Njenga with the day's business.
Yes, Mboya, we are today looking at the day's business, and we kick it off tonight with the shilling, which has weakened to a fresh record low, pushed by high dollar demand from importers shipping in general goods and fuel companies. Now, according to Reuters news agency, commercial banks quoted the shilling at a high of 123.80 cents against the dollar, from closing average of 123.70 cents on Friday.
The Kenyan shilling has been under pressure against the dollar, touching an all-time low of 123.60 buying and 123.80 selling during Monday's intraday trading. According to Reuters news agency, this is a new record low for the shilling that weakened from Friday's closing rate of 123.45 buying and 123.65 selling. Businesses project that the weak shilling is likely to escalate the inputs, especially those that mainly rely on imported inputs or products. Francis Kamau, the managing director of Highview International, that deals in importation of motor vehicle spare parts, says the increased cost is likely to soon reflect on products.
Currently, we are trading at an all-time high of 127, 128, unstable Kenya shilling, that is.
He says the costlier dollar is affecting the ability of businesses to ship in key products and inputs for manufacturers.
We've also seen a bit of disruption on supply chains. We had seen even some shipping line taking even about 50 days, but we are coming back to the norm, to a normalization of the same.
The pressure on the shilling comes at a time when the rate of inflation has remained above 9.0% since September 2022, according to data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Hibak Said for Prime Edition.
Now to Kilifi County, where the county government is procuring an 800 million shillings sewerage plant in Malindi town that will make briquettes to be used as an alternative source of energy. The initiative will see the plant use excretory matter from lavatories in Malindi and Watamu towns with the aim of reducing over-reliance on charcoal that pollutes the environment.
The growing population, aggressive deforestation and expanding economy have led to increasing fuel prices, which often hit hardest low-income households and small businesses. About 82% of Kenya's population cooks using non-renewable energy sources such as firewood or charcoal. To correct this, Kilifi Governor Gideon Mungaro says the new project involving procuring an 800 million shilling sewerage plant in Malindi town to make briquettes was part of his administration's agenda to clean Malindi town and its environs.
Makaa yatatengezwa hapo, katika ule uchafu wote mnatoa kwa hizi nyumba zenu zote utatengenezwa hapo, uchanganywe na mandrifu za minazi na makuti na kanja, na mtakuwa mkipoa makaa hapo na kaunti, ndio mwache kukata miti ili tuweze kuweka mazingira yetu.
The production of the briquettes is expected to create hundreds of job opportunities, improve Malindi's town drainage system, and reduce water shortages in the devolved unit.
Agenda kubwa nimesema afya, maji, na najua hata hii Malindi bado na tabu ya maji. Malindi, mji wa Malindi bado unastahili kutengezwa. Na tayari tumepata wafadhili, tutaendelea kuangalia mitaro ya maji machafu. Tafuta kundi la kina mama ama vijana watapewa waziendeshe ili watu wawe na mazingira bora ya kutumia hivi vifaa.
Ndusamo Kami for Prime Edition.
Now, economic recovery from the negative effects of COVID-19 pushed up insurance premiums in the months of July, August and September 2022. Latest data from the Insurance Regulatory Authority indicates that premiums increased 11.4% to 238 billion shillings, mainly driven by general business underwriting.
Insurance was among the most affected financial service by the COVID-19 disruptions. Easing of travel and day-to-day restrictions supported by the insurance industry, if the latest data from the Insurance Regulatory Authority is anything to go by. The data indicates that economic recovery from the negative effects of COVID-19 helped drive up insurance industry premiums during the months of July, August and September 2022. Overall, IRA says insurance industry premiums increased year on year from 213.5 billion shillings to 237.90 billion shillings, representing 11.4% growth. Of this, long-term insurance business premium stood at 103.49 billion shillings, while general business premium stood at 134.41 billion shillings, just like was the case in 2021, when the underwriting performance of the general insurance reported a loss of 4.13 billion shillings. Quarter 3 of last year saw the losses narrow to 2.26 billion shillings. As has been the case in recent years, motor private, motor commercial and personal accident classes of general insurance business reported the highest underwriting losses of 2.89 billion shillings, 1.75 billion and 868.74 million shillings respectively. On the other hand, workmen's compensation class continued its good performance, reporting an underwriting profit of 2.48 billion shillings, which was the highest for the industry. Alanoko, Prime Edition.
The private sector ended 2022 on a high as new business rose at the sharpest rate at 51.6 in December, leading to accelerated increases in output and employment. The latest Purchasing Managers Index attributes the growth to softening inflationary pressures as firms saw cost increase to the smallest extent in 2022. Take a look. According to the latest Purchasing Managers Index report by Stanbic, for the month of December, the private sector witnessed the strongest rise in new businesses since February, leading to accelerated increases in output and employment.
The Purchasing Managers Index picked up a 3-month high of 51.6 in December, rising from 50.9 in November, signaling a modest improvement in operating conditions, one that broadly aligned with the average seen since the survey began in 2014. Businesses that saw a rise in activity cited high demand and sales, favorable weather conditions, and slowing inflationary pressures. More Kenyans were employed in December, with a slight rate of job creation, the fastest seen since March. Rising staff capacity allowed firms to deplete outstanding work for the second month in a row. In December, a new order inflows increased amid reports of improving demand conditions. Moreover, the rate of sales growth quickened to a 10-month high and was solid overall. There was improved performance in agriculture, manufacturing, and wholesale and retail, contrasting with falls in construction and services. Some firms noted that improving supply conditions, lowering wage costs, and stabilizing energy prices helped soften inflation despite reports of currency depreciation and higher VAT. Subsequently, companies raised their output prices to the smallest extent since August. Only 11% of firms expect output to rise in 2023, with confidence remaining subdued amid concerns about the global economy.
Now, that story on a private sector activity brings to a close business news for tonight. But you can find more stories on our website at kbc.co.ke. My name is Wairi Mujenga. I now hand you over to Mboya. Good night.
After months of rigorous training, recruits are ready to serve the nation in their various fields. Tune in to KBC Channel 1 this Tuesday, the 10th of January, for the passing out parade ceremony of the National Police Service, live from Kiganjo campus in Nyeri. The ceremony will be presided over by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Kenya, His Excellency President William Ruto.
You today. This isn't like you at all. This isn't your first rejection. Why are you so beaten down today? Hurry up and go home. That's a direct order. Geez, stop looking. That's a different guy from that of last week? You get a new job and I get a new boyfriend. It's only fitting. So are you done wasting my time? There's more to it. Read this here. This guy came out of nowhere and sat down with me. And not only that, he's handsome. The guy sitting with you is Harvey, babe. Excuse me? That's Harvey sitting with you. I'd planned to spend more time with you tonight, but I guess we'll have to meet another time.
Jenny? You still look the same, but act differently.
Fool over here, Fabiola. Who gave you those flowers?
I'm not done yet. You will go when I tell you to.
Fabiola, please receive this ring as a symbol of our strong commitment.
You know what, Fabiola? I think it would be better if I don't come back. Why don't you go back to your party? If you don't go back...
And if I don't go back, what?
Let go of me! Let's go. You don't know who you're backing up against. Back here! Is that all you have, you loser? Your girlfriend hits harder! Your girlfriend hits harder than you! You'll pay for this, you loser!
Back and now let's get spotty. The government will not interfere in the running of any sports federation, but only there's a condition. If those associations stick to the values of, number one, good governance, to integrity, transparency, accountability, and the rule of law. The government will, however, create an enabling environment for the better running and development of sports in the country. Barclay further reports.
The Kenyan government wants to see Kenyan teams performing at the highest level internationally and will create an enabling environment for all federations to run their affairs without interference. But the federations will be forced to run their respective disciplines with the values of good governance and focus more on the development of young talent. While promising a better relationship with all sports federations, Cabinet Secretary for Sports Ababu Namwamba singled out Football Kenya Federation, which has in the past been at a crossroad with the government, leading to Kenya's suspension from all football activities by world body FIFA. The suspension has of now been lifted.
FKF cannot run as if it's an island. FKF is part of the overall Kenyan ecosystem. So they must make sure that even as we expect everybody to run their institutions on the tenets of good governance, FKF must also obey the values of good governance.
Namwamba met with officials of FIFA and CAF to agree on a way forward and ensure Kenya faces no more disciplinary action from the world body, and also succeed in their bid to host a continental football tournament before the year 2030.
While government is not interested in interfering in the management of FKF, government expects FKF to live by these irreducible minimum values: good governance, accountability, transparency, and democratic ideals.
The meeting came just a few weeks before the commencement of the bottom-up grassroots football, which will see coaches on the ground to identify talents and the spreading of the Academy of Sports to all parts of the country. In addition, CAF and FIFA will provide technological support in the upgrading of the sporting facilities in Kenya before the approval of any hosting of an international tournament, beginning with the Africa Cup of Nations.
CS Ababu Namwamba, they are sending some stern warning to FKF, asking them to build synergies and also to observe best practice. Let's move on now. Defending champion Edina Jepitok finished second in the 79th edition of the Cross International Juan Magre, World Athletic Cross Country Tour gold meeting held in the Spanish town of El Goiba. Jepitok completed the 7.6 kilometer event in 25 minutes 51 seconds, 0.08 behind Eritrea's Rahel Daniel, who emerged victorious in 25 minutes and 43 seconds. Bahrain's Winfred Yavi finished third ahead of Kenya's Margaret Kipkemboi, who settled for the fourth position. Meanwhile, Ethiopia's Solomon Beraga won the men's 10.8 kilometer race after clocking 33 minutes and 14 seconds. Bihanu Bale of Bahrain finished second in 33 minutes and 27 seconds, while Adel Mechal of Spain finished third. Golf now. The sixth leg of the U.S. Golf Kids Nairobi local tour came to an end at Sigona Golf Club with 163 budding golfers taking the course. Following the Sigona event, the tour now heads to Vet Club Sports Club for the penultimate leg on the 15th of January 2023.
The junior golfers across the different player categories were feted for their performance in the tournament, which had been organized according to the junior golfers' ages. The junior golfers aged between 5 and 18 years took part in the tournament that is jointly organized by the Junior Golf Foundation and the U.S. Kids Golf Association and supported by NCBA Group. In the 15 to 18 years boys category, Chris Shah emerged as the winner, having carded 81 gross. He was followed by Kevin Anyen and Hansel Tang, who finished in the second and third positions respectively. In the girls category, Mariam Wakitawa emerged the winner in the 15 to 18 years category, having returned a score of 81 gross. Coming in second was Chesire Washira with 94, while Antonia Mbuthia claimed the third spot with 96. Following the Sigona event, the tour now heads to Vet Lab Sports Club for the penultimate leg on 15 January 2023.
Golf, athletics and football does it for the day's sports. I want to thank you so much on behalf of the Prime Edition team coming to you from Broadcasting House right here in the capital, Nairobi, Kenya. My name is Mboya. Good night and God bless you.
Kupata Waibrania kama skiza tuni yako, bonyeza star 811 star 817 hash.
Yesu Kristo ni yule yule, jana, leo na hata milele. Wahibrania 13 mstari wa 8.
Kupata Waibrania, bonyeza star 811 star 817 hash. Star 811 star 817 hash.
Take on Tech, a weekly program that brings you technological debates and concepts. Let us assume we have a young innovator who has come up with an app.
Financial technology and financial services is a very complex game.
Keeping you up to date with the latest tech news both locally and internationally. Apple has lost its position as the most valuable firm amid tech sell-off. We also explore different innovations by our very own young innovators. Make sure you don't miss. Tune in every Monday at 10:30 p.m. only on KBC Channel 1.
Previously on Mpakani.
Ibra, go undercover, tafuta place utafit in na ugain trust ya locals.
Kitu tu inaniambia he's okay. And at least sasa hivi umerudi job, at least tutawa push umtafute na bidii.
Lazima. Mtoi nilimchukua, nikamleta huku nimfanyie birthday. Na namfanyia period.
Ni sawa nitakulipa, ni vile vitu zangu saizi zimeshikana kidogo.
Wewe ni terrorist?
Hapana, lakini
hii look yako imekusaidia ufanye kazi.
Ni ataki imefanyika hapa. It was just a diversion to pull us away from the crossing point.
Share hizo picha kwa roadblock zote.
Yes sir.
Naambia local police weke 50 km perimeter roadblock. Tunaelewana?
Yes sir.
Hiyo truck is Tokyo County.
Uko fiti? Uko sawa? Hebu muangalie mguu. Muangalie huko juu. Uko poa bro? Uko poa bro. Wewe nini watu wanafanya hapa hivi? Ni gari anafanya nini hapa hivi? Takona gari hapa nini anafanya hapa gari? Toa gari. Halo. Toa takona gari hapa hivi. Toa gari hapa. Halo. Kijani tokeni hapa. Tumpeleke siwe. Hara kijani. Wewe ni gari hapa. Pole pole tunamtoa. Wewe ni kama. Pole.
Mini fighter, kani moto mini lighter, leta ngori niko rada, leta no motani pata, bless this my land that I vow to protect, nipe nguvu so that I can defend, tunajua niku dangerous, tunaomba unji pray for us, mpakani tuko on, mpakani tumeweka ndani. That I vow to protect, nipe nguvu so that I can defend. Tuko rada, tuko rede, wasanare tuko rede. We are the city, we are ready, we are ready. Tuko rada, tuko rede.
Natumai kila kitu iko sawa sawa.
Kwa sawa. Asante.
Pole kwa yaliyotokea.
Asante. Hey, mambo? Ruth, nini mbaya?
Wamenipigia simu kutoka headquarters. Walipata safe house ya Sam. Nilikuwa nimechomeka.
Ati?
Akiniambia tu kweli Farah. Is he dead?
Tusijump to conclusions.
But safe house yake ilikuwa imechomeka na wanasema it was burnt on purpose. Farah, niambia tu kweli. Amekufa.
Walipata body? Basi, let's not give up hope. Sam is well trained and capable of making it out of any situation.
But hawakumpata Farah, hawakumpata. Na bado hajacheki. Oh God. Why is this happening?
Okay, Ruth, just calm down. Relax. Please just take a deep breath. Wacha nipige my sources alafu nitakwambia, sawa? Just don't lose hope. He'll turn up sooner or later.
Sasa unataka nifanye hivi? Hapana.
Unataka watu kuchukua serious kwa kazi?
Lakini hizo pieces ni mogo.
Kuliko makeup kit yako?
Makeup kit yangu ni essential. Si upate hizi guns kwa ready kwa amani. Hello?
Poa, cheki, umeongea na Frank?
Hapana, kwa nini?
Jaden ni mtoto anasoma na Imani, ameniambia Imani hajakuwa kenda shule for 3 days sasa.
Ati?
Ebu pigia Frank confirm nini mbaya.
Umeona hiyo? Umeona hiyo bana university? Hasira ya nini?
Kwenda bana.
Hasira ya nini wewe baba?
Tu sawa.
Unajaribu?
Unaona nisaidia sana sasa.
Tulia, acha hata nijienjoy. Leo ndo mara yangu ya kwanza kukushinda. Actually leo ndo mara yako ya kwanza kushindwa na mtu yeyote. Lakini usijali, sitambia mtu yeyote kwa hii base. Sawa.
Unisaidie kwenda
bana. Hello.
Hello Karisa Katana.
Ndio mimi.
Nakupigia simu kutoka Miti Loan App. Bwana Katana, tunaona ya kwamba loan yako ya 30,000 iko overdue.
Naweza kupigia baadaye tafadhali?
Bwana Katana, tumekuwa tukikupigia simu na haushiki. Usipolipa loan yako itabidi tukuweke kwa CRB na tuambie mwajiri wako.
Angalia, tunaweza zungumza hii mambo tafadhali. Nisikize.
Fanya vile utaweza Bwana Katana.
Kila kitu iko sawa Pantari ama unakimbizwa huko?
Kila kitu iko sawa, ni wife tu. Unajua hii ball inatukimbisha sana. Wacha nimpigie tuongea baadaye, sawa?
Uko sawa? Uko poa? Shit. Uko poa? Poa. Sitembea.